Yay. Very excited. Okay. All right. How is everybody doing today?
Good.
Good. I saw a few people leave. I just want to send a quick thing in the group me real quick to have people come back on because I just saw a few people who had left.
Okay, thank you, Scout. Let's give folks a quick couple seconds to log back in.
Mm-hmm.
We have 9 people on the call, counting me, and that's about what we started with. So we might have who's coming so far.
Well, I'm logged in twice. I'm one of the callers on the phone.
Your name only comes up once on my thing, so I think we have 9 live people.
Yeah, I think my name comes up once because I'm logged in on my laptop, and I'm one of the. Get started.
It could have been because you're the facilitator, man. Somebody chopping wood.
So welcome everybody. So we, Scout, do you want to lead this part? Could you go back to the first stage, or do you want me to do the first agenda review?
Oh, you can go through it. It's no problem.
Great. So thank you everybody for taking the time to log on. I'm hoping that more people can hop on. This is a really super important agenda today. Just a reminder, we have another webinar next Sunday because of Easter, and I know other folks' schedules at the rest of the month of April. So it's really important that you all mark that in your calendar for next week, and then we will see each other again in person in May. So we're going to do welcomes and check-ins. We'll review webinar number 1 and webinar 2. I have some really important updates for you about NFYI and Shadow Day. We're going to talk about how to build your team. That's your team of delegates. We'll go over conflict resolution, and then there'll be some closing. Thanks. We thought that our welcomes and check-ins today could be, let us know what your name is, and then if you were to be an animal, what animal would you be today? That doesn't mean what your favorite animal is. It just means what animal are you feeling like today? So I'll start since I'm already talking. My name is Rebecca, and today I would be a sloth because I just got back in late last night from traveling, and I've been trying to just lounge around today and get as much laziness in as possible.
This is Marcus, and kind of feel kind of sloppish too, only because I'm on the back end of a very nasty cold. I've basically been sick for the last few days, but still in good spirits.
This is Tasha, and if I could be an animal, yeah, I'm a sloth too. I got a tooth pulled and it hurts.
This is Fred, and if I was an animal, I'd be a poodle because it's warm and humid here in LA today, and my hair is all frizzy like a poodle.
My name is Scout, and most days I feel pretty slothy, but I've had a very productive morning this morning cleaning around the house, so I would consider myself a hedgehog, like Sonic.
Wow.
This is Cherie, and I would probably be a panda, a very curious panda.
Hi, this is Frank. Can anyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can, Frank.
Okay. I'm Frank, and if I can be an animal, I will be a greyhound today because I moved around really quick today. I've been in 5 cities in a day, and I feel like a greyhound today.
Hey everyone, this is Jordan, and today I'm feeling like a cheetah. I'm headed to the gym after this call, so I'm feeling really energized.
A cheetah. I wish I was a cheetah today.
125 million other quarterbacks.
Hello, this is Amy, and I feel like a turtle because I'm just moving in slow motion. I have a migraine.
In this world, there are two kinds of quarterbacks.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear about your migraine. Oh, we hope to get you off the phone sooner than later, Amy. I hope you feel better.
Hi, my name is Miriam. If I was anything today, I'd be a sloth just because I'm a little bit under the weather.
Did anybody else call in? I think we got everybody.
I think those are.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Scout, this one's you.
Well, so first we can just kind of check in to see if anyone can recall what we talked about in the first webinar and what was the major takeaway from you from webinar number 1, and same thing with webinar 2. Next. Or how about put a different way then maybe, what about from webinar 1 did you think about most when you were going through your delegate applications?
So I focused a lot on when going through delegate applications. I'm a benefit of the doubt type person. So I gave everyone equal grounds. When you write in your application that they're looking for a vacation, well, yeah, that didn't sit well. But I did read every one of them multiple times before then going back and forth with myself with my bed full of piles of papers. I don't even know how to explain it, but yeah, that's what I did.
I know one of the things that I was thinking about, I don't know if anybody else that went back to go see it, was again reflecting on the cultural humility piece, and I really, aim to use that during the different phone interviews that I had. I think I had a pretty diverse group of people, different ages, different experiences, and I wanted everybody to really, have a fair chance in a sense, based on, what they individually brought, to the table. So that was one of the things that I remembered, or, and was thinking about, and, went back to go and review. I can't remember which one that was that we did. I think that was during our second, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you are correct. The cultural humility was in webinar 2, and it's really great that you decided to apply that to how you're looking at your delegate applications. That's a really good piece to put in the formula about when you make your choices. I know me, I was mulling over everything I review and review and review. It actually took me a little while to kind of come up with my final recommendations. And speaking of that piece on cultural humility, was everyone able to kind of watch that video? I know we had some technical issues when we were trying to do it live, but did anyone see it after the webinar? And would anybody like to share their thoughts on it?
Well, everyone, while we're on the topic of videos, I've learned how to show them on the webinar. So if you have something you want to share with us, let Rebecca know, because we don't share it now.
I'm sorry, you guys. I have a terrible cough. If you weren't able to watch the video, if you could please make sure at some point that you do, just so that we're all on the same, just so that we're all on the same page, you know, moving forward, and everybody really understands what the idea of cultural humility is this year. So I understand that you guys may have been busy, but if you guys can make sure that you watch the video at least before the retreat, that would be great, because we'll be reviewing it.
And I just reposted it back at the group meet, so you don't have to search for it again if you want to take a look at the video.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. I never saw the video link.
You should see it now. I posted it in group meet again.
Yes, I see it now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and important concept, and I think it'll really help us too as we engage with, you know, our delegates and each other, to realize, you know, the kinds of things that are different between each other culturally, and what we can do and cannot do to maybe understand or navigate those differences. I actually really appreciate learning about this, because it stands in contrast to cultural competence, which for me, that was where my mind went to at first, until I started doing a little bit more learning about cultural humility. And it's cultural competence, but plus that piece on humility. So just recognizing that there's some things that you cannot know or be an authority on or speak to about someone else's culture. You know, I am grateful to actually be able to learn about that. So it really is a great video. We should all check it out.
Thank you, Scout.
But yeah, I guess we can move on to the next slide.
And I also want to say that Scout and I really want to make these webinars a conversation with you all. I'm sure that it gets pretty boring listening to my voice over and over again, you know, throughout the webinar. So we really want to encourage you guys to participate. I know webinars are always a little hard to engage in, at least for me. I'm a very visual and kinesthetic learner. So please feel free to write in the chat box, speak up during the webinar. We really want to hear from you. That'd be really helpful and supportive to me and Scout. So the really important and FYI update. So this is really super important. If the people who aren't on the call today, you want to help me remember to remind them, I'm going to reach out to folks next week to try to go through it. But also, you know, if you guys could help as a community, reminding them. So we had a huge shift in the congressional calendar late last week. And basically what happened is it's the anniversary of D-Day. And for those of you who do not know what D-Day is, it was during World War II when the Allied forces stormed a beach in Normandy, and they called it D-Day. It helped shift the war from Germany winning the war to the Allies winning the war. It's a really big international holiday. So there's a lot of members of Congress that will be taking jets and flying there in honor of D-Day. And what the speaker has decided to do was to close votes on Wednesday. So that left us a problem, because when there's no votes on the Hill, everybody goes home. Like, it literally is like a ghost town, except for congressional staffers who stay there and work all the time. But if we were to have Shadow Day on Wednesday, then nobody would be shadowing a member of Congress, because no member of Congress would be there. So we had to sort of think about what we could do. And the problem was by moving Shadow Day, the day that you actually shadow, from Wednesday to Tuesday, it then cut out time for folks to do the workshops and actually get prepared for their shadow. So what we're going to end up doing is asking folks to come in a day early, and then we'll leave a day early. That does not mean that you all are coming in a day early. Your schedule won't change a whole lot, except you get to leave a day early, which we didn't think anybody would be upset about. But but what that does mean is that you only have one full day to prep. I'm going to try to get you maybe the morning, depending on when folks arrive on Saturday, to also do some prep work. But I wanted to do that to let you know about the shift. So let's review the new agenda. I can answer any questions. So the new agenda is that staff will continue to arrive on Wednesday, the 29th of May. You all will continue to arrive on the 30th, which is Thursday. You will have Friday to prepare. On Saturday, which is June 1st, the delegates will arrive. We'll have welcome session and game night. Originally, this Saturday was actually a Sunday, so that's the big, huge change. And then on Sunday, we'll have opening sessions, workshops 1 through 3, and then we'll have an open mic night. On Monday, we'll have workshops 4 and 5. We'll take the group photo, and then we'll have a town hall prep, which is, in the agenda, you might see it called workshop 6, but really staff is doing that. We'll have the town hall, and then we're going to do a film night and pizza night back at Gallaudet. Because we pushed the town hall now has to be from 4 to 6, we are going to have, instead of dinner at the Capitol, we'll have dinner back at Gallaudet, where we'll have the opportunity to have the film festival. Then on Tuesday will be Shadow Day, and we'll have the awards gala Tuesday night. Wednesday will be the free day where people get to go to the museums and the monuments. And I loved your idea of the advocacy through art, or the art group, the art stuff going on. So we're going to have that on Wednesday night. Thursday morning, we will have our morning debrief. And then the delegates will start to depart the morning through the evening. And then after our debriefs, you guys will depart. On Thursday, some of you may end up getting pushed to Friday, just in case if your flights are later on in the day or early in the morning. We'll work with you on that. That was just like before. And then, so that is sort of the new agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns about this update and agenda?
If need be, it's Tasha, by the way. If need be, because I know we're having 1 day of prep instead of 2, and because I'm driving, that I would be more than willing to come the day before to help staff.
Great. I will let you know, Tasha, if we end up needing that. I appreciate that. And let me be clear, for the staff will actually have 2 prep days, right? Because they'll be there to prep on Thursday and Friday, but this is really your prep day to get into your workshops, run through your curriculum, feel really good about launching into Saturday.
Do we even have a curriculum yet? Like, are you sending that out anytime soon?
Do you have repeat the question?
Do we have a curriculum yet, or we're just not getting it until we get there? Okay.
As soon as I write it and it's been edited, I will send it out to you as soon as possible. That is my major goal this next 2 weeks, is to get that out to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Great. Hey, Fred, I hate to throw you in the spot. I forgot to tell you this. Could you just give a quick numbers update on where we are at with the delegate applications, as far as like how many people have been accepted, and how many people have been waitlisted, and how many applications are out still? I know that in Fred's defense, I forwarded Fred your applications, as I get them. So he may not have had time yet, because it is a Sunday, to update it, like to where it finally is. And we can send you those numbers on Tuesday. But I'm just curious, Fred, if you know from the last time that you were able to get all the numbers in, where we're at.
Yeah, as of Friday night, I'll tell you what the numbers are. Give me a second.
Great, thank you.
And I hope you all don't think I'm always perpetually unprepared. I didn't know I was going to have to contribute that. 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, I'm opening up the sheet, because I think I know the numbers by heart, but I'd rather just read it to you since it's easy to open.
Thanks, Fred. And I meant to tell you earlier, and
Yeah,
then I got
and I didn't
sidetracked.
mean to sound like I was throwing you under the bus. You know I'm cool.
Yeah.
I wish I was having a sloth day. Here we go. All right. So far, we have received a total of 185 applications. And of those applications, here come the numbers. I'm on the wrong page. Okay, and so above those applications, and you listen, I've got to tell you, I was telling Rebecca, I'm so impressed with the seriousness of your comments and the care that you put into the decisions you've made so far. Seriously. It's just, it makes me feel like we're going to have such a successful Shadow Day. So we've got 185 applications so far, and of those, we have accepted 68 of the applicants. We've declined 47 of them, and we've waitlisted 12 people. And then we have 6 people that are currently, you currently told me you're actively, you've approved them for stage 1, but you haven't made your final decision. So I think out of all that, we still have about 52 to 54 applications that I have not seen a response on to whether you've approved them or not. And I know that Rebecca has reached out to everyone that still owes us some answers. And just get them in when you can, and I will prepare a report for Rebecca every day this week so that we know where we are on those things. And if she wants me to share them, I'll be happy to do that through the GroupMe app. So does that answer
Great.
your question?
That does. Thank you, Fred. And I really want to encourage you, if you have applications out, please, please, please try to get them to me as soon as possible. This is super important, particularly now because the date is changing for the delegates. We want to have a really smooth communication line, and so we need to send out acceptance, decline, or waitlist notifications by next Friday so that people can let us know if they're able to come in on Saturday and problem solve for that. Flights need to be booked. So we can't do that until we have all of the applications back, because what I don't want to have happen is folks are being notified that may know other people who've applied, and then those people haven't heard back. It's going to increase folks' anxiety. And I don't want to do that to people. So just like with the regional coordinators, we sent the notifications out all on the same day so that everybody who applied as a regional coordinator were notified within a few hours of each other. So that would be really great if you guys can get those to me. If you have gotten them to me, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And like Fred said, you guys have done a really tremendous job at going through these applications and thinking really critically about the people that are coming. And I think you guys are going to have amazing teams to support there. Fred, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Scout.
Yeah, so next we're going to be talking about building your team. But before I go into that, I want to just say, too, for what it's worth, I did have a regional coordinator reach out to me kind of about some things that they were curious about my feedback on making their recommendations. If anyone kind of wants a second person to help them think about what their decision might be, just shoot me over a GroupMe or send me a text or anything. I'm happy to take the time to talk with anyone about what their recommendations are or what they're curious about. But moving along, for us all, well, I guess for you all, the regional coordinators, you're going to be assigned your regional delegation no later than April 19th. So we're just going to kind of shift focus on our plans to create a strong delegation. And if anyone has ideas too, just between now and when that time comes that we all get our list, definitely share it on GroupMe. We want to make sure that we're sharing ideas with each other. Just because I know with myself, I really appreciate when people think about things that I didn't even think about, and then they tell me it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have been doing this for how long? I think someone mentioned in our last webinar a question that they asked that was not on the rubric, but is an excellent question about the purpose of Shadow Day. So, that's really important to bounce ideas off each other. And we can go to the next. So building your team. No, there's just some questions that we should be asking ourselves, to make sure that we are getting the most out of the development of these relationships. Particularly, what are some challenges to building a team virtually? How is building a team virtually different than building it in person? And how is it the same as building it in person? And particularly, what are your goals when building your team? I wonder if anybody has any quick thoughts on these questions. Any one of them.
I think that
I don't have any.
I was gonna say you definitely, want to maintain communication. And what I mean by that, even in particular, just even though like the studies of communication, most of it is nonverbal, but when we're doing it virtually, you have to, maintain that verbal communication, with people and making those connections, on that level. And I think as building the team, the idea of it is to build connection, through the communication because, people, they're coming in and they, we're all strangers starting off and people are hesitant, and so you want to build that trust. You want to build that trust as a leader. You want to make sure that you can be able to, either answer questions or if not, know where to get those answers from. And then you also want the people to know that you are a reliable resource for them so that they know they won't be wasting their time when they come contact you or ask you questions.
Sorry, I don't want to cut anyone off real quick. I have to go into commuter mode because I need to drive. So if someone can send me those slides, that'll be great. Other than that, I can still hear you.
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcus. That is such a good point.
To get rid of the dry space, I think another challenge just might be, the planning and different people possibly in different time zones or, having different schedules. So you really have to be flexible and open, to make sure you can include everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are going to have different different time zones, different communication styles, people in different, coming from different parts of the country. Like I know just in California, for example, Southern Californians do not use the word hella, but people who live in Northern California do. And so we can always tell each other apart by the use of that slang word, right? So, things like that, you're going to have folks that might use different vocabulary words and things.
For me, I think that the thing that always leads to like confusion or miscommunication is like sarcasm versus like serious statements. So I'm not generally sarcastic, but when I do make a sarcastic statement, through a text message, it always kind of comes off as like passive aggressive. So over time, I've realized to be more intentional in terms of how I communicate through written text, so that there is no moment where somebody says, "Wait, are they like, is that person like throwing shade on me?" Or like, sarcasm doesn't work well through text. So for me, that's one challenge, for just in my own personal approach.
Hey, Scout, an idea while you were sharing that, idea that I thought of maybe doing is, maybe you can ask your team to, like they ask on Facebook to post your top 6 emojis, but then we could possibly ask, what do those mean to you when you post them?
Nice. That's a good way of getting around it too. And does anyone have any more thoughts on that? Because we're actually going to kind of dig into this a little bit anyway.
This is Dell. Yeah, emoji communication is really interesting. I find that everybody has their own language implicit in their emojis, so that's I'm glad you guys brought that up.
All right, and we can move forward. And I think it was Tasha who said that she's going into commuter mode. So yeah, we'll have all the slides sent over to you too, because a lot of this is like the reading stuff, but we're going to talk about the words anyway. But yeah, just so you do have it for your reference.
And you know, Scott, I can get the a link for the video call, like with the call itself with the PowerPoint by tomorrow out to everyone, and I can send it through Group Me as well if you'd like.
Perfectamundo. That's great.
Okay. You let me go to the next slide?
Well, before you move on really quick, I also really want to highlight that I'm really identifying your goal, your team goal, and what is your purpose, right, for yourself, so that as you're building a team, that you're really intentional on what you want that outcome to be. So I really would like everybody, and I will follow up with folks as well, because I think this is really important, and where a lot of people go get a little off track is when you're not really clear where the end of the road is, right? So we know what the purpose is for Shadow Day, but you as a regional coordinator, what is your goal with building your regional delegation? Like, what do you want that outcome to be? You want everybody to go through Shadow Day that was part of your regional delegation with what knowledge, what attitude, what skills, right? I want you to think about that before we assign you a regional delegation, so that when you're thinking about the activities and the communication that you're doing, you can be really intentional with what you want your outcome to be. Now you can move on.
Yeah, so I really appreciate Marcus's information too, because a lot of the stuff that he talked about just in terms of some of the potential issues and things that we can do to alleviate some of those problems, you know, we're actually going to talk into this next slide. So thank you for setting us up with that, because one of those things really is time zones. We are going to be communicating and coordinating with people in different regions geographically. There's going to be differences in time zones, and especially me, where I don't always, I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because I'm so used to working in my region, just in general. So that's one thing, that a potential issue that I just have to be more intentional about, to remind myself that there are people in different time zones. So another thing is availability. So in addition to time zones, you know, people work different times of the day. People have different obligations throughout their lives. So kind of making sure that we are clear about our availability, and having an understanding of everyone else's availability, the delegates. And it's funny too, because it's on here, because Marcus, you mentioned strangers. You know, we're all strangers here, and I'm very much like this, where in new groups, I'm a little more in the shell than I typically am. And it does take me some time to kind of get out of that shell. When I did Shadow Day years ago, my pod leader was like excellent at recognizing that. And it was one of the reasons that I kind of stuck with Shadow Day over time, is because it really is a skill set to be able to know when someone's in their shell and how to kind of bring them out at their own pace. Which kind of and cultural incompatibilities. This is something that Rebecca had gotten into a little bit, just in terms of like different misunderstandings with verbiage, or just language in general, that can be perceived or misperceived by the receiver. And you know, it's something to be careful about in your own communications to your delegates. And of course, there are solutions. So when building a team, you really do want to be intentional. It's super important. And like Rebecca said, you want to focus on your why, be clear about your why. So like the purpose of what you're doing and what you're supposed to be communicating about with your delegates. GroupMe is a really great channel of communication. You know, we take advantage of it, and it's really great too when you have your delegates to communicate with them through that, because it's one of those things. I think emails are a little more challenging in the sense that you kind of have to go in and, you know, you kind of have to put on a certain hat with your emails. But GroupMe is just a quick message. When you have it in your head, you say it, and it's there for everyone to see. Number 3 is good. I really appreciate this. So an introduction video. I want to give everyone a little bit of a homework assignment, myself as well, for an introduction video, introducing themselves and also the community that we live in. So for me, it would be South New Jersey. Just talking a little bit about what's in the area, you know, what's around the area, what I do, you know, things like that. I want everyone to kind of submit that on our own GroupMe, just so we can kind of set that precedent. And when we have our delegates, we can give them our introduction videos too, to kind of break the ice so they can feel more comfortable doing that. Because I think our thinking was that this is a really good way of breaking down some of those barriers through text communication. And I think having communicating with people is better when you can see their face. And which leads into the next thing about conference calls. You know, this is a good thing that we could do or could not do. My preference is that it's kind of you get a feel for it with your delegates. I think it's a great thing, but you know, you just have to take it at their pace. And GroupMe is a great substitute when that doesn't happen. Weekly icebreaker questions. Icebreakers are really always great because you get to learn more about the person than just what it is that we're talking about in these webinars. So it's really good to learn more about like the dimensions of someone. And the group discussions about the delegate webinars, that's going to be really helpful just to kind of keep the energy alive in between the webinars, because there's some time and we want to make sure that we have that energy, that momentum that's growing into Shadow Day. So when we get there, we're our best selves. And then lastly is Google Hangout, similar, you know, functions to the GroupMe, but you know, it's another great way of just doing quick communications with people and staying engaged. And does anybody have any other things that they think might be a way to strengthen their relationships and build their relationships with their delegates before we move on?
I mean, if you're, you know, and this is, again, if people are, you know, more so, you know, comfortable with it. And then also if you have it set up that way. But I know that people, you know, especially in this day and age, they like connecting on social media. Some people are more, probably feel a stronger connection over social media than they do in person, you know, a lot of times, especially in dealing with situations, you know, where it's more so business or something professional that we're doing. And so that might be, you know, you may make yourself available or let them know the areas that you are available, you know, to communicate on there, because you'll be surprised at how, you know, many times people are busy, but they still have access to social media at times when they don't have access to a group meeting like we're on right now or GroupMe, but they'll still, you know, have scroll through Facebook or use Messenger, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be another way, just, you know, if you're willing to make, you know, make that another avenue where people could be, could communicate and have access to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's another really good point. And I'm a little inept on the social media piece, so this could be a potential issue. And I'm glad you mentioned it, Marcus, so I can be more careful and involved in that domain also.
Yeah, I was gonna look at it. I've been going through some ideas of, you know, some of the things that I wanted to do. I'm doing some things with this other type of group, and they have like a closed group on Facebook, you know, but on there they do like a lot of announcements and meetings using live, because you can go live on the group, and then afterwards the video is still there. So maybe if you were going to do like some generalized meetings, you know, it might just be a closed group, and you set specifications like, hey, we're going to have this group, this is our delegate team, we'll have this. You can let them know that the group will end, you know, as Shadow Day ends, and, you know, set parameters for it, and schedule times that, you know, you will have meetings or go over some generalized information that way too. I think it kind of makes it, you know, more fun, but it's also another way to get information out there.
Mm-hmm. And then I just want to highlight real quick, because Amy asked a question about group names, like if we want to have a name for our group of delegates. And I think if we want to have like Rebecca's answering too for anyone who's not following the chat, but kind of for you can do it. It's certainly a good thing to kind of build a morale in the group. There's also going to be colored lanyards that we're all going to be represented by for our delegate groups. But definitely, you know, a short name is something that we can all do if we want to, because I think that it does build a culture in the group very quickly? So that is a good question, Amy. Thank you for asking it. And if anyone has any other thoughts, you know, but otherwise, I guess we'll just move to the next one.
Are we planning on communicating with like 8 or 10 people? Is that what we're talking about for our groups?
Yes.
Okay. It seems like it might be good. I don't know how we would go about this, but there's information that we are wanting to get to all the different pods or groups. So it might be a lot to manage platforms. Like
what do you
Facebook
mean, Del?
like to do Facebook for 8 people when only 4 or 5 of them might use that platform. I guess I'm thinking it would be good to have 1 or 2 people manage, like everybody pick a platform to communicate. I'll think this through, but I'm not sure what the best way, because we're all going to have different styles, and so it's going to take a lot of work to manage a Facebook group with so few people.
No, and I was just giving that as an option. That's just one way that you as a regional coordinator could communicate with the group if you wanted to. What I was sharing about Facebook is not just for those that are on there, it might be a way that you can make yourself available. Obviously all of us are gonna need to be available by phone and by email, and those are the classics, but what are some other ways that would increase the likelihood of you being able to create a connection quicker, and be able to get the information that you need to your people, knowing all of the challenges that are ahead as far as different time zones, different schedules, et cetera, et cetera. What are some things that you can do, to help that, be easier on your part? So that was just a suggestion.
And I think the other thing is get with your group. I know almost every group last time had a group me. So Del, it may be, one of the things that you ask your delegates is to download the app GroupMe. I think the nice thing about GroupMe, like Scout had said, is that everybody can get the app or log in on a computer, and then they can get messages instantaneously. We will have a Facebook group for everybody going to this year's Shadow Day to do more mass communication. But the other option is to possibly start an email chain before you download things and ask people what is the best method of communication for them, whether that be the GroupMe or a Facebook group, or there's a million other platforms out there I'm sure that you could identify that folks could utilize. You could do the Google. I know some of our Leadership Corps chapters utilize the Google chat rooms, which is nice, but not everybody can get those on their phone. So I would check in with your group when you first get your delegation and find out what is going to be the most effective for them, and where they can see those instantaneously and reply as soon as possible.
Awesome.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to go into conflict resolution, and this is really important because, you guys are the first people that are going to be interacting with and formulating relationships with. You're going to be doing the workshops, and you're going to be going to meals, and you're just going to be really the person that is going to have your finger and ear, to the ground and know what the dynamics are of the groups. So we want to talk a little bit about conflict resolution. And I want to just point out that conflict is not necessarily a bad thing, right? That conflict is very normal, it's very natural. And sometimes conflict can really lead a group or 2 people in a direction that ends up at the end of it being beneficial for both parties. One of the things that we want, to make sure that we're doing is that we're not having conflict at the conference that's going to end up where there's negative outcomes, right? Such as physical altercations, screaming matches. Like, I'm sure that you guys are aware of negative conflict, negative outcomes that happen from conflict. We want to try to facilitate it. The biggest thing, the biggest thing is going to come into de-escalation. And really about you guys being observing and sort of knowing when the tension is rising and being able to intervene before it passes into a place that can be detrimental for others involved, right? So conflict resolution is a way for two or more people to find peaceful solutions to the disagreement. And when that dispute arises, the best course of action is the negotiation to resolve a disagreement or the negotiation to agree to disagree, right? So the goals of negotiation are to produce a solution that everybody can agree to work as quickly as possible to find the solution, and to improve and not hurt the relationships between the groups in conflict. The truth is that if people in your group don't get along, like, I think part of it is also reminding them that we are there and keeping the goal in mind, and that if folks want to go home after Saturday and never talk to someone that they met at the conference, that's okay, right? Like, we do not have to be each other's best friends, but we do need to formulate a healthy, positive working environment for the next 5 days. Next slide, please. So again, the main, I'm sorry. I feel like these are not the slides. Scott, are these the slides we went over?
Yeah, I know we went through this one.
I'm sorry. So I am clearly in sloth mode. So the main goal of negotiation with your opposition is to come to an agreement that benefits all parties. So one of the things that you guys are doing is trying to understand more about folks' ideas and beliefs and backgrounds that are going to be different from yours or for the conflict and the parties in hand. We will get more into at the T4T of how do you just deal with difficult people in general, and what are some facilitation techniques to work around that. I think you'll have some of that where people use a defense mechanism because they're uncomfortable and out of their element, or maybe they're triggered by their own trauma, and they just sort of want to be difficult with the group and not go along with the group, or maybe they're tired. There's lots of different reasons. But this is more about, the conflict we're talking about right now is more about when you have disagreement within your group where people just are feeling the opposite of each other, right? And that they don't want to maybe come to terms or come to a place where they can hear each other, right? So you want to ensure that the relationships with everybody is continuing to grow. And if we can make peace with each other, then we increase our own allies in the community. Successful negotiations pave the way for smoother relationships, right? So the idea is that people can disagree, but we want to make sure that we are doing that in a peaceful way. And so that's what our goal is. Next slide, please. I should have taken them out. Okay. Conflict resolution is appropriate for almost any disagreement in our daily lives, and it's a great opportunity for negotiation between parents, children, coworkers, that kind of thing. But for more serious conflicts between groups and individuals, we're going to need some skills. So again, it's really about de-escalation. I also really want you guys to make sure you're utilizing your staff and letting us know, hey, I'm noticing these two folks, right, have some tension building. And that way staff can just come in and have conversations with people. It's not about giving anybody in trouble. It's about making sure that you and the folks in your delegation have support. Yeah, next slide, please. Does anybody know what a conflict that looks like that leads to positive outcomes? That should say outcomes, sorry. Positive outcomes looks like?
Okay, I would add, like, when you actually have like two different informations, and then one side trying to educate the other of what they know, and it's a mutual learning, because the other side learning what the information that they have, and the other part also learning about the other information that they don't have. So it's like a missing pieces of the puzzle that they're trying to put together to complete the information as a whole.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's where both sides are learning. That often happens you know, when somebody might have a different point of view as yourself, or I know that I have really super appreciated my friends that think about the world really differently, because I'm able to really hear, even though I disagree with them, I'm really able to learn about their perspective and their point of view, and look at the world in a way that I hadn't before. What does conflict that leads to negative outcomes look like?
Well, when it's when it's involving like disrespect of other people, or when it might be, you know, any kind of inappropriateness or harassment that's going on, as far as on the part of the leader, if there's things going on like that, and you're not addressing it, or, you know, you might be dismissive, or you might appear to be dismissive or come off, you know, as being dismissive, I think those can lead to you know, some negative outcomes.
Absolutely, Marcus. Thank you. So disrespectful, name calling, right? Physical altercations. I think too, I feel like a negative outcome is also when people walk away and don't feel heard, and that their point of view doesn't feel heard. I think that has a negative outcome for people, because one of the reasons conflict arises is that people, I think, are trying to be heard. And so there's a way to have folks be heard without agreeing with them, right? So again, the key to conflict resolution is de-escalation. It means you're going to intervene before emotions are elevated to the point where they become unsafe or unhealthy, when they become elevated to the point where people stop listening to each other, right? If I'm really upset at you, I'm having a really hard time to listen. So the goal is, and we're not always as successful as we want to be, is to try to step in and help facilitate communication amongst people in your delegation or cross delegations, so that we are able to have people heard. One of the biggest tips that I'm going to say that I don't even think is on here is it's really super important that you remain calm, right? As the person that's being the support person, if you get escalated, then the situation gets escalated very quickly. So if you feel like you're super emotional about a situation, then it's really important that you get support and step out of that situation and allow someone else to step in to provide that de-escalation. So tip number one is be empathetic and non-judgmental, right? We're not there to take sides. We need to respect people's personal space. So sometimes people need to walk away, and that's their coping mechanism, and that's fine. And maybe we need to let people walk away and re-engage them in 30 minutes, right? To have them continue to have a conversation, to have some resolution. It's also really important that you understand your space and your body language, right? So if I'm really upset and Marcus steps closer and leans in towards me, it's just going to escalate me because I'm no longer feeling safe. I'm picking on you, Marcus. You would never do that. But if Marcus were to see me upset and he were to take a step back and maybe his posture was a little bit more relaxed, I'm less likely to see him as a threat, and it will help me de-escalate, right? You also want to use non-threatening nonverbals. When people are upset, that is not the time that we talk about consequences to their actions. And you don't say things like, oh, you're going to have to go home, right? Or anything like that. You don't want to discuss possible consequences to their actions or have any type of threatening nonverbal communication or verbal communication. You want to avoid overreacting. You want to focus on feelings. So why is that person upset, right? It sounds like they're angry, or they're sad, or they're scared, right? Or they're really passionate about a specific point of view, and they really strongly disagree with another person's point of view on their life, right? Ignore the challenging questions, right? Sometimes if we get solved with really complex questions, people are upset, they throw those out there. When people are upset, that's not the time to go and have a philosophical conversation with people, right? So it really is about redirecting people to de-escalate, and so that they're not as at a heightened, right? When we talked about trauma-informed care, right? When people are triggered, this is really similar. You want to help people reground themselves so that you're able to engage in conversation as opposed to conflict. excuse me, I am fighting a cold. You want to also set limits. I think sometimes when people are upset, they ask for things that you can't deliver or that are really unrealistic. So you want to make sure you have limits and that you go back to your boundaries. And also to choose wisely what you insist upon. Sometimes to get people to participate or cooperate, you ask them to do a lot of things that maybe in that moment they're not able to do. So think about that and really think about what is the most important boundary that you want them to do. Maybe it's take space and that you talk about later, or maybe they've taken some space and they don't want to re-engage that person and you're feeling like there needs to be some closure to the situation. And so then you ask them, like, I'm really going to insist that when you're ready, we have a conversation, the three of us, right? So that we can find a middle ground. Also, don't be afraid to have silence, right? Silence gives people an opportunity to, one, calm down, but also reflect on the situation and give people time to make a decision. I think when people are really upset and you're like, what do you want to do? How are you going to handle this? And you fire those questions at them rapidly, you're only going to escalate the situation. What are some ideas on other ways that you have experienced being able to de-escalate situations?
Did you say what are some experiences as far as de-escalation?
Yeah.
I mean, as a, I have to use it a lot on my job, and really, it's listening to people. It's a mixture of things for me. I think as far being proactive as possible as I can. So if I kind of see something before it kind of spills over, if I see something and it may become something, you may or may not know that. It just depends on experience. So there's some things that over the 5 years that I've been in a position, I can easily recognize, hey, this will become this, if this doesn't happen. So I would start off by, going to engage the people, that are involved. A lot of times when it is conflict like that, sometimes people don't feel comfortable, coming to say something first, because what I've learned in their eyes, they feel like that they might make it worse or they're making it become a real thing by actually talking about it or by actually, having some kind of official move on it. But a lot of times that's the best thing for them to do. So, to circumvent that, I usually go and do it first, just to kind of engage or ask questions, so from that regard, if there is an issue, the very first thing is I, always ask the person, what have they done, to address the situation with the person, what was the feedback, go over some options with them. And then the last resort would be, that we will actually have a private meeting with all parties involved and, just kind of facilitate the meeting, not to take it over, but to literally facilitate it, with the means of, identifying the solution that everybody can work with doing.
Yes, thank you so much. And Amy also said, knowing and recognizing the signs, have a de-escalation plan. So that's something that the other homework assignment I'd love for you guys to start thinking about, because I also, de-escalation needs to be something that happens for you in the way that your personality works, right? So I'm somebody that has no problem sort of being more involved and more vocal, where you might be someone that's not going to be natural to happen. So I want you to start thinking about looking at these slides, what is your de-escalation plan, right? How do you plan to help support your members resolve conflict and de-escalate? And then let's talk about that. Next slide, please. And so now that you've sort of de-escalated, it's really important that you, again, inform staff and Scout of any sticky dynamics that you observe so that we can support you and your delegates in avoiding harmful conflict. And sometimes, you guys, again, this is not about getting people in trouble, But sometimes it's about me or Scout sitting at the same table as a couple folks and engaging them in a conversation, right? Like, it doesn't mean that we're going to pull people out and say, you guys don't get along, we need to talk about this. Like, sometimes it's about running some interference, right? And figuring out how to do that. So please, please, please communicate with us. The other thing I also want to bring up from last time that I heard folks say, now that we're on this, and this triggered me to remind me to bring this up, is I know that on the last webinar, some folks were saying that they, might be certified EMTs, or that they might have CPR. We really super want you to not give medical advice. Actually, that's something I'm asking you not to do, is to give medical advice. Last year, there was a situation where someone gave some well-meaning medical advice, and then that medical advice was not the outcome that we had all intended to happen, and that was really hard. So we are not doctors. It is really important that you let staff know if someone is sick or injured. Obviously, if it's an emergency and their heart is stopped and you happen to be certified in CPR and first aid, and you decide that you're going to utilize that training, that's a different circumstances after you've called 911, obviously. But if somebody's like, hey, I think I'm having this problem, and then we don't want you to step in and be medical professionals in this capacity. Not only does it open an FYI up for liability, but it also opens you up for liability, right? If something were to happen and they said, oh, well, Scout told me, right, that I should do this or take this medication or whatever it is, right? So really make sure that along with the conflict and these dynamics that you might be observing, that you're keeping staff informed of any medical things or people not feeling well. Last year, somebody had to have their appendix removed, and it took staff a couple of days before we realized that it was serious enough to go to the hospital. So we really need you to communicate with us so that we can make sure people are getting the type of care they need. But in the event that we do need to do some conflict resolution, here are some 8 steps when successfully negotiating the resolution of that. One, it's important that you guys get clarity on what is happening, right? If 2 people are screaming at each other and you try to step in and help them, if you don't know what the problem is, it's really difficult. And sometimes that means that you separate folks, or you ask to hear one side of the story, and then the other person, you ask to hear their side of the story, so that you have an understanding on what the problem is. And then it's really important that you're communicating with all parties so that they feel heard, right? And again, that doesn't mean you agree with them. It means that you've heard them and that you understand their perspective. And then you work with them to say, hey, I see that you guys, have this conflict. What are some possible resolutions, right? What are we going to do about this conflict? I think in the case where it's like, hey, I am pro-choice and I am pro-birth, like, some of those are not going to be areas that you're going to be able to identify a resolution, right? But the resolution that you're identifying is, how can we work together? I'm sorry? Hello? I'll repeat that. I said, in the case where people are have philosophical differences, like maybe somebody is pro-choice and the other person is pro-birth, you're not going to have a resolution. What you want to focus on is, how can we continue forward and move together in this conference and focus on child welfare, right? And that each person has felt heard by their side, but that we're not going to solve that really big social issue today, right, at this conference together in a group of 3. So really it's about reconnecting folks with the purpose and goal of why they're there, getting them to agree to disagree on their philosophical differences, and maybe finding some commonality where they can become acquaintances for the next 5 days and continue to move. And maybe the other resolution here is having them identify what could be some respectful communication, where they would be able to interact with each other in regional delegations in a way where they both are feeling respected, right? So then you are going to choose the best resolution. I think sometimes when you have a disagreement with 2 people, unless together as a group, you guys are like, hey, this is the best resolution. If one person thinks this is the best resolution and the other person thinks that's the best resolution, if you're uncomfortable choosing for them, then come get staff and we can make that final decision. Because you want to remain neutral in this situation. It's always best to try to get everybody on the same page and agree. I'm not sure if someone's trying to talk. And then you want to act as a natural mediator or utilize staff as a mediator. And what I mean by that is that mediators, one, you don't take sides and you don't insert your own opinion, right? So if you agree with one person or the other, you don't want to say that. It kind of goes back to your role as a regional coordinator and a facilitator. You want to be Switzerland. You're the neutral ground so that everybody can connect with you and feel supported by you. And you're going to do that as a mediator so that you, I just realized that my mediators are spelled completely different. And I apologize because spelling is not my strength. And I'm sorry. We'll fix the slides. But essentially, you're trying to remain neutral so that people don't feel like you're taking sides. That's only going to escalate it. Explore possible alternatives and help them cope with stressful situation and pressure tactics. Work with everyone to identify what their coping mechanism is, right? I can see that you're really angry right now. How can I support you to be less angry, right? Or to process that anger, or to have space for that anger, or whatever they need to do so that they can re-engage with the conference, right? And that we don't want anybody to have a bad time and just be 5 days angry, right? What can we do? We might not be able to solve the problems, but we could definitely help them stabilize emotionally. And then again, allow some space and time. I think the other thing is that being okay that you can't solve every problem, and being okay that people are going to be upset. Like, we can't control that. People are allowed to feel how they feel. Whether we agree with their feelings or not, they get to feel how they feel. And we're going to respect that and honor that. And as long as they're feeling how they're feeling in a safe way, then we're going to try to give them some space so that they can have those feelings and own that for themselves. Are there any questions or other additions that you would like to throw in the mix on how to help conflict resolution?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we did, just to remind everybody, part of the application process or, interview process, we did ask people, what do they do to cope in stressful situations too. So that might be something, if we're able, or it becomes back available to us, to revisit, because a lot of times people have already kind of given you the answer. And in that way, that's an encouragement for us, in the event that any kind of conflict arises.
That is a fantastic point, Marcus. You were a little broken up, so I'll repeat what you said. That we did ask people what was their way of how they cope during stressful situations. Fred will help me remember that when we send you your regional delegation, we will make sure that we're including their application in that regional delegation so you can review their answers. Because it may be that you might be getting folks in your regional delegation that you did not review their answers. So I do think it's important that you guys sort of see how they responded to some of their written applications on what they could use as support. And you can always go back and ask them as a team, one of those group meetings, like, how can we help you when you're stressed out, right? Like, what does that look like? Icebreaker questions, so that the whole group knows, hey, when Rebecca looks frustrated, she needs some space. Hey, when Scout looks frustrated, he needs someone to actually lean in and ask him if he's okay. So that would be a really great icebreaker to do too.
And I'll remind you of that. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Fred. You can move on to the next slide. The Zen Den. So we're bringing back the Zen Den. I'm super excited. Scout, feel free to talk about your experience with the Zen Den last year. So the Zen Den, for those of you who weren't there last year, is going to be a space for people to go and get additional support, or even just like, hey, I'm really overwhelmed right now. This has been a lot of stipulation, and I need a cup of tea and some quiet atmosphere. So we'll have a Zen Den that will be open during workshop time when people are over there, and we'll have another Zen Den that will be open in the dorm area. Now, the support will be available 24/7. So the way that this will work is that a staff member will be on call at night, so that if folks really need support, that they have you guys, there's a number for them to call every night of the week if they want someone to talk to and sit with. Otherwise, we're going to be setting hours as it relates to our schedule and when we're going to be there. We're going to have a lot of volunteers, so we're very excited about that this year. But in addition, we have the Zen Den support team. One of them is Lindsay, who some of you met last year. She's getting her MSW at USC and was an NFYI intern last year working with the LA Leadership Corps, and she's really fantastic. I know she really connected with a lot of you possibly that were there last year. We also are bringing in a friend of mine who just recently moved to New Zealand. She's a former foster youth. Her name is Jamie Lee Evans. She used to work with California Youth Connection, and she sort of ran their similar support zone at their conferences. She also is just like a really amazing human being. She has started a lot of nonprofits that benefit foster youth, like the Youth Training Project and Youth in Mind. She started the Foster Youth Cultural Exchange. She started the Foster Youth Museum. So she's just really embedded in our culture and our community, and is really, her heart is in the right place to want to make sure that everybody that comes is able to get the support that they need so that they can walk away and have a positive experience. These are also opportunities for these individuals for you to reach out to and say, hey, I have somebody who's kind of struggling, and they can individually check in with people and just to make sure, you know, that people are feeling supported and have the support that they need. It's really crucial that you come to them and or me and or Scout or anybody else. Again, if you start to see that folks are really pulling away from the group and might be having some depression stuff going on, that we really have a pulse on that and that we can make sure we're checking in with people and referring them back when needed to mental health support in their area. Do you want to add anything, Scout?
Yeah, just to say actually that's a really good thing that you mentioned, because I remember there were a few times last year where I had to message Lindsay and say, hey, this person, you know, kind of like said something that I think needs to be followed up with, and I'm not the person to follow up just because that's not my skill set. You know, and Lindsay is just really good. She was really good at pulling people aside and getting them in a place where they're comfortable to express themselves. You know, to sort through those issues, because sometimes the Zen Den is not there, you know, if we're out or something, and we want to make sure that we are, the one thing that I think of and that's been going through my head constantly throughout this webinar is just like be attentive. So be attentive to your delegate. Just make sure you kind of are familiar with some of their general mannerisms, so when something is off, you can identify it, and making sure that you're careful with people's triggers. You know, things of that nature, but especially always reach out to Lindsay or some of the other, you know, supporters who will be there for those kinds of things. You know, I think a lot of it is just, I had to use the Zen Den a few times too, just, you know, because I'm the type of person where like the word decompress I see here, that's exactly what I need to do sometimes, where I just need to sit and be quiet, and that's the best way that I can cope with the stressor sometimes. So this isn't just for the delegates, but it's for us too. I think a big part of leadership is kind of knowing what you can and cannot do and being humble about that. So that's just the one thing that I wanted to emphasize on this slide.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And the Zen Den is available for staff, for, you know, 6 or 7 days. And sometimes you're like, I just need sort of a dark, quiet place with a cup of tea to just decompress, right? Or I need to bounce some ideas off of someone that I know this isn't going to go anywhere with because, you know, I'm really frustrated or whatever. Like, this is a good place to do that. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then do you want to take us into self-care? The last slide?
Yeah. Yeah. So, just like I was suggesting, it's really important that we take care of ourselves. We can't help others be prepared and well if we're not helping ourselves first. We just want to make sure that we're the best selves that we can be so we can exercise that leadership role. I think when a lot of the people hear like leadership or manager or whatever, they think that that comes along with like kind of being like robotic and kind of remaining, keeping your poker face and everything. But while all that stuff is important, it's also it's important to kind of know your limits, like Amy just said in the chat. That is super important, and I think that that's the thing we focused on in the last webinar and will continue to focus on, is knowing what your limits are as a leader. That's really where leadership comes from. It's not about being, you know, robotic in the sense that you don't or you're not affected by anything that takes place. So you really want to make sure that you're taking the time to process and decompress events from your day, and to brainstorm on what went well and what are some areas of opportunity. That kind of reflection is super important. Again, just keeping your best face forward. You want to take the time and do something that makes you happy, especially that's unrelated to the conference, or so if that's like reading a journal or listening to music or reading a book, make sure that you're giving yourself the time to do that too. Sleep. Excuse me, I skipped the Zen Den and the support team. That is going to be super important. I know that I've had to use it. I'm sure that there will be times this year where I will have to use it again, the Zen Den, or take advantage of some of the support team or staff. The big thing for me is sleep. I think that we're taking in a lot of information and we're having to talk about a lot of information. So we just want to make sure that we're well rested, and that'll help us keep our composure through all the days. Eating regularly, so we don't want to skip meals. We want to make sure that in addition to being well rested, we're also nourished, so we can kind of bring a certain level of energy and attention to the matters that we'll be focusing on, and just take the time when you need it. So I remember last year during an event where basically right at the end of it, I said, all right, I'm not going to take the main way of transportation that everyone else is taking back. I'm going to go my own way back to Catholic University and just go at my own pace and absorb and reflect on what took place and reframe my mindset. So when I got back to my group, they didn't see maybe that I was stressed out about an event that didn't go the way that I wanted or something. And then just ask for what you need, big or small. There's no shame in asking for help. I've asked for many small things before and some other big things, and NFYI is super good at making sure that there's a constantly supportive environment for us all, because we all need it in different ways. And again, for me, that's the most important thing when I think about what it means to be a leader, is making sure that you know the people you work with, and know yourself too. So always reach out when there's something that you think you can use some support with, whether it's me, Rebecca, or the staff, or any of the other supporters like Lindsay and such.
Yeah, thank you, Scout. And I want to touch on a couple of things. I think one of the things that I appreciated about Scout last year is that you always made sure that when you needed something or taking some space, you communicated, right? So the big piece is that you're communicating and not just disappearing. That we sort of are like, oh, Scout needs, to take his own mode of transportation back. And that way we can make sure that his regional delegation or that other folks are supported during that. The other thing is, I think what I have found, I've been doing this a really long time, is that people you will see everybody running around and working really, really, really hard. And then you're like, ooh, but everybody's working really hard. And I feel really bad for wanting to take some time or wanting to need some space. And I don't want you to do that. I promise you, every single person is going to have a moment where you're like, I need an ice cream break, right? I need a half an hour. And it's okay. And we will all come together and support you. I remember one time, not at an NFYI conference, but I was at another, youth conference where people are working a lot and doing all that. And the staff just sort of was like, I'm going to go get ice cream because I can't do anything else. And we were like, great, go have some ice cream, come back when you're ready, right? And so people, you're going to need to like really do that self-care and check in with yourself and communicate with staff so that we're there. And there's no shame in the game. And if I feel like, hey, I never see you and you're, sleeping in a lot, I think, we'll have a different kind of conversation, but that's not been my experience. The other thing with the sleep, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen your first few nights there, you're going to be super excited and you want to bond with everybody and you want to stay up all night. And because it's a lot of fun and people are a lot of fun. And then you're like, oh, wait, I forgot I have to wake up as a facilitator and be, and have the staff meeting in the morning before everybody else and set up my workshop room. And so that's going to be what I find sometimes the hardest thing, is being able to not engage in some of these late night social activities, even the ones that stay on campus, because you're really having an in-depth, passionate, deep conversation with someone. But maybe setting an alarm on your phone that says, hey, I know that I'm someone that needs 5 hours of sleep and I'm going to figure out how to get that. If you're dealing with someone and you need a staff to come over and help support that person so that you can go to bed, so that you can do that, That's why we have staff that are on call, right? So I really want you to think about how many hours of sleep do you need in order to function. Everybody's different. So you're going to see some regional coordinators who naturally only get 4 hours of sleep. And you're going to try to, you know, hang out with them and really think about what it is that you need, because we're all different.
And if I could just interject about that too, the word is lame. Like, I didn't want to say it at first, but when it comes to sleep, like reaction time. So like there's going to be a lot of moving parts with Shadow Day and a lot of things that change and a lot of things you might get a question asked that you don't know the answer to. And you just want to make sure that, like, because sometimes with me when I'm really sleepy, I don't react well. You know, it takes me a while to take in information and react to it. So part of being well rested is making sure that we can respond to situations and be adaptable and flexible. And I think that only is going to happen when you're nourished and rested, whatever that means for you. But just make sure you know what that means for you and you're doing it.
Awesome. Are there any questions about this webinar?
I have no questions. It's Tasha. But want to say thank you for this last couple of minutes of it, the Zenden and stuff. I know I'm the type of person who has a habit of running myself to the ground. And then when I'm now overwhelmed, I'm exhausted and I can't take anymore, like I'm a fleer. So I just get up and walk away. I don't tell anyone, I don't say nothing, I just leave. So thank you for making sure there's support there, so that because I'm working on this habit of mine, but so that doesn't give me much of an excuse to run.
And that's a great point, Tasha. We do not want you guys to get to the place where you're like, I am so done with this. You're going to be tired and you're going to work hard and hopefully you're going to have a lot of fun doing this. But if you're starting to see yourself go down that point where you're like, I am going to just leave this conference and never come back, that's not a positive experience for anybody, right? So I can't read who you are on the inside. I wish I could, but I can't do that. And so it's really important that you're able to stop and pause and read where you're at different parts. And again, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? We're not doing a conference in one day. We're there 6 or 7 days. And so that's going to really require some stamina building and to pace yourself, right? Like nobody can run a marathon if they start off at full speed. So think about how you're going to pace yourself and what you need to be successful in pacing yourself.
A crap load of coffee.
And you're right, Amy, communication is the key. Is there any other questions, comments? Great. I just want to repeat again, because I know some folks have joined us. Levi, hello. I hope you're still there. Some folks have joined us after my NSYI update. I just want to repeat that there's been an important date change. Thank you, Tasha, for screenshotting that and putting it in the group me. That because of Congress's shift and closure of the Hill, we had to shift everything back a day. So the delegates will now be arriving on Saturday instead of Sunday. Your schedules are exactly the same. You just get one less day of prep. If there's concern about that, please reach out to me so that we can come up with some creative solutions. And it may mean that you guys won't be there or go to the airport to get folks to come back. Maybe it's that you guys stay and we have volunteers and staff do that. But I know some of you are really excited to meet people at the airport. But if you feel like you need extra prep time, then let's talk about that so that we can meet that need. So again, there's a date change. The delegates are arriving a day early, and you guys and everybody will be leaving a day early. Woohoo! So, you know, spread the word. And it was so great to speak with everybody. Thank you so much, Scout. You're an amazing co-facilitator. Thank you so much, Fred. You're an amazing host, webinar host. And thank you for letting me throw you to the wolves today with the question that I can tell you about. I apologize for the misspelling and the slides that I wasn't, you know, I don't know what happened.
You know what? And I didn't proofread that. I was too busy with the artwork part. I'll make sure I've got your back next time.
Thank you, Fred. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we'll be in touch soon, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone.